Morning, everybody. Well, at least it's morning here. Well, today's the day. I'm going to work on getting the transmission back here into the Nova. It's always a good idea, just going through the hardware and everything that I pulled off of it when I removed it from the car, to identify which bolts and nuts go where. It's been a few months since I looked at any of this, so like I said, that's always a good idea to get it done beforehand, so that way you know if you're missing anything. Bring you back when I got more. Okay, here's the transmission. This is my idea. Right now I'm by myself because the wife is out doing errands. So instead of trying to carry this thing, as in walk it, all the way over there to the car, I decided I have a cement floor. So we'll put it on my creeper and just roll it over. So that way all I had to do was go from the bench to the creeper. Roll it over to the car. Now you see I have a piece of plywood under the car, one next to it, so that way this thing's going to roll because I have a gravel driveway, and creepers don't like gravel driveway, at least not ones with tiny wheels like this one. So, just a DIY hack, I guess. Alright, so got it up under the car. As you can see, the detent cable is in place, or kickdown cable, depending on what you want to call it. And now comes the fun part. We got to get that jack, where is it? There it is, underneath the pan to be able to lift it up into place, which it's hard to see. There's the end of the starter snout there. We got to get it all the way up into there, but sure, I'm not even trying to do that by hand. That's why we have the jack. We also want to try and sandwich that piece of plywood over there in between there so I don't damage the pan in the process. So, bring you back when we get more done. Okay, well, as you can see, transmission's up in place. It's not completely bolted in yet, but one piece of advice. Before you get everything else mounted and bolted in, you want to get the transmission lines. I don't want to get my finger up in there. Yeah, there we go. Woo! Come on, focus. Transmission lines, you want to get those in place and make sure that they're tight before you go to put everything else into place, because they're hard to get to now. They'll be even harder to get to later. Now, the other thing you want to make sure you get done is that vacuum modulator metal line and hose. Get that hooked up, because once you put the cross member in and the exhaust bracket, that's really almost impossible to get to. So get that put in, get this put in, whoop, there it is, that, and make sure on these hard lines that they're not rubbing against each other or anything else, because they will eventually rub a hole in themselves if they're rubbing. So, piece of advice. Alright, well, as you can see, transmission's in place. I got the drive shaft slid into place, but I still have to tighten down the bolts way down there. Sorry about the lighting. The sun's out, which is definitely nice. Makes it feel warmer, but causes problems with being able to see. I still have to hook up the torque converter to flex plate bolts. Put the speedo cable in. Shift linkage. Other than that, and putting fluid in it, I think that's it for putting the transmission in. Well, I'll bring it back here in a little bit. Alright, well, we finished installing the drive shaft. Oh, train's here. Now, I don't know if I had told you before, but initially when I was diagnosing the problem with this thing, I dropped the cover on the differential back here and drained all the oil out, because I thought something had gone wrong with the rear end in it. Turns out I was wrong, but now I need to replace that gasket and refill the fluid. So, just one more thing to add to the list. Show you more in a little bit. Alright, well, this is the arm that comes down for the shift linkage from the automatic. Got the hole there. This is where your adjustment goes through. This here end is the end that goes inside the frame rail into a cup. Now, you always want to lubricate this, because where this slides into is a little plastic bushing, so I'm going to clean this up real good, and I'm going to put some grease in there. Now, the last time it was greased was probably when it was new, so the grease that was in that little cup was really hard and really dried out. So this ought to make things move a little bit more smoothly. Oh, and you want to grease these, either grease it or lubricate it some way. This point you don't have to worry about as much, but because these are pivot points. So that way your shift linkage works better. All right, show you more in a bit. All right, sorry about that being so close. This is a hole in the frame I was talking about. This here's a little cup that goes into it. You slide that into there, then over here in the shift bracket is where this goes in. Now, as you can see, that can be a little bit tricky to get in there. So you gotta adjust it where it goes in all the way. Assuming, oh yeah, and don't put it in upside down. This doesn't go that way. Comes in from the bottom. There's park. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it definitely helps to put it in the correct way. So now you can see this sitting more or less level. It's a little bit off, but it always is. And this here arm comes down from the steering column. It attaches right here. And that's why I say make sure you lubricate this. I got a little bit of grease in here right now. I'm going to put a little bit here before I actually put this on there. And then this here piece, you can barely see it here. This one. This here will slide up and down the shaft. That adjusts where your shift points are as far as for the manual part of it. So you want to make sure that you adjust this when you go to put it back together to make sure you're getting all your gears. Okay, show you more in a little bit. Alright, shift linkage is all in here. As you can see here, whoa, big finger. Come on, focus, there it is. I put a little washer up underneath there. This here clip, wow. This little spring washer here didn't have quite enough tension with the bolt tightened all the way down to keep this part, this knob right here, which you can't see right now, but it's what indexes into this bracket from rattling. So, I don't know, worn out or whatever. So I put a little washer in here to give this some tension. You can't really see it, but you can see I got my fingernail in between there. So now it's got tension, so now it ain't rattling around. That'll give me a nice even shift every time when I go to move the lever up inside the car. So now it's time to put these bolts in. As you can see, if I can get this to rotate, yep, there it goes. I don't have those in yet. So I do have a flywheel turning tool, which basically is just something that grabs onto these teeth and you can rotate the engine with it. But I think for now I'm just going to use my wrench here and just rotate the whole thing. I'll line one of them up, put a bolt through it, and then I can just use that bolt to turn it. So, show you more in a bit. Alright, now we got the torque converter flex plate bolts in. Ooh, sunshine. Time to get this here cover put on. It's just 4 bolts. They're really coarse thread, more or less self-tappers. That's the way this one is. Some of them are different than that. They have fine thread. Just make sure whatever came out is what you put back in. Alright. Alright, well, got the new gasket put on the back of the differential here. Just filling it up with oil. It's kind of hard to see. Oh, I'm trickling out. Not good. Depending on which vehicle you've got, which rear you got, will determine how much you need to put in there. You can see real quick right there on the end of my 3/8 extension. That's the plug that goes in there. A lot of these old Chevys, it's just a 3/8 square. Now, one thing I have been told, and it's probably a good rule of thumb, before you go to pull the cover and drain the oil out of one of these, make sure you can get this little plug off of here, because if you can't get this plug off, that means you can't refill it. So, do that first. Alright. Well, as you can see, got it down off the ramps, turned around. Took it for a little test drive, shifts real nice, brakes and everything still work. All I got left is to put the exhaust back on it, and I got a light I just found out, a marker light that's out, so I got to fix that. But other than that, should be pretty much ready to go. So until next time, have a good one.